In this episode, we're going to take a look at the OSEE GoStream Kit, which is a small 4-input live stream hardware switcher for live streaming. And it is a kit that comes actually in a Pelican-style case with a built-in kind of chassis, metal chassis with a 14-inch monitor as well. And it's a really nice portable package. All the ports are on the back of the case. Pretty cool. Let's take a look at what it is. So for those that are not familiar with this whole concept of a hardware live stream switcher, this is very, very similar to the ATEM Mini models of live stream switchers. So if you're familiar with those, this is basically a competitor for that, newer to the market than the original ATEM Minis. And there are a couple of differences between them. They're not exactly the same. The OSEE has some features that the ATEM Minis don't, and the ATEM Minis have some features that the OSEE don't. So what I'm going to do here is kind of walk through some of the pros and the cons here and then kind of compare and contrast them, talk about which of them may be a better fit if you are looking at these. Now, these kind of switchers are probably not nearly as popular with the gaming streamer crowd. Most of those folks are going to be using OBS, software type encoders that run on a computer. These are more popular with folks that are doing kind of more talk shows, house of worship, weddings, and funerals, and any other kind of live events, maybe business type events where you want to live stream. That's where these tend to be a little bit more popular. And I use the ATEM Mini Extreme ISO on my live stream pretty much every day for the last 2.5, 3 years, or whenever those first came out. I got it right about when it first came out. And it's been a pretty good switcher. Not perfect, but pretty good. Let's talk about what makes this one unique. So it does have 4 HDMI inputs, 2 HDMI outputs. One of them is actually dedicated to the built-in 14-inch monitor, and then the other one you can use for as an external source to something else if you wanted to, maybe to another monitor, whatever you need to use it for. It allows you to have a program out, again, to a monitor or something, and you have the multi-view on the 14-inch monitor that's built into the kit. So that's how it would typically be used, although you can configure that to do that differently if you wanted to. It does have 2 USB ports to accommodate a couple things. First, a USB webcam, and secondly, another one you can connect to your computer, and that essentially feeds a stream to your computer, so you could use OBS or any other app. So you could use Zoom, you could use anything that will take a webcam input. So that's really nice as well. vMix, Zoom, OBS, etc. It can be powered 3 different ways, which is a very unique feature. So it can be powered via ACN. It has an IEC connector on the back, which uses just a very standard cable that's used for tons of things, PCs, appliances. There are millions of these cables in the world. Standard there. There's also a DC input, which is a barrel connector, and you can connect with the included cable. It is a DC locking barrel to D-tap, so you can connect and power with a V-mount or an Anton Bauer Gold mount or any other sort of cinema battery. So those are actually very common as well. And then you can also use a USB input. There's a little slot here for a USB battery bank, and any battery bank that has a power delivery capability can power this as well. It's actually surprisingly conservative in terms of the amount of power that it uses. It's, depending on the brightness of the monitor and other things, somewhere around 14 or 15 watts. So that's pretty manageable. There is a built-in fan. There's a metal chassis where the little deck itself sits, where there's a slot for the USB batteries. And then, of course, there's the monitor in the lid of the case, which is really quite convenient. Let's jump in to who this thing is for. As I mentioned before, this is going to be those that are kind of looking for a very portable solution that they can take with them, or even if you have, in my case, for example, you do live streams regularly from the same location, but it's a shared space, so you can't always leave everything set up. So for me, that could be very convenient. And in some cases, I stream from this room. Other times, I stream out in my open basement over there. So being able to move this and have the monitor and the switcher all in one is pretty convenient. Now, this is going to be more commonly, I think, appreciated by content creators, influencers, YouTubers, hobbyist live streamers. I do think online educators will find it very useful. Again, not so much the gaming crowd. I think the gaming crowd is pretty committed to OBS, and that's fine. That makes sense. And there are advantages, of course, to software encoding apps like OBS, whenever they do a software update, then that's awesome. You get additional features there. On the downside, I have found that I want my computer dedicated to other things when I'm live streaming. So for example, if I'm teaching how to use some piece of software for audio processing, I want to have my computer dedicated to that instead of running like 6 or 8 different things and have to manage all of that. So that's how I like to manage it. It also could be very useful for people that are doing like live streams of weddings or funerals or business meetings or anything like that as well. Who's it not for? I think for large scale installations where you need more than 4 inputs, probably not the best fit. Gamers, again, are going to be pretty interested in OBS or other kind of software encoders. So that's kind of my thought on that. Let's go through the pros. Number 1, portable, complete, one case, includes the monitor and the deck. It also includes a slot here for powering and gives you 3 different options for powering. Fantastic. It has a separate app that you can use to control it as well. So in addition to be able to control everything from the menu right on the deck itself, and that menu will show up in the multi-view screen, you can also control it with an app on your Mac, your PC, or in Companion, which is an open source app. There's a plugin for Companion that allows you to also control it on that. And Companion can run on a variety of different platforms as well, including, I believe, iOS. So that gives you some options there. The one really unique, well, not just the only unique thing, but one very unique thing about this relative to the ATEM Mini models is that it does have an SD card slot. And on that SD card slot, you can record. You can record a single stream. So you can record, for example, the program output, but you can also change it if you wanted to record a single source. You can do that. You could even record the multi-view if you're into that for whatever reason. So that's an option as well. But you can also play back from it. So it is essentially like a hyperdeck, which is really, really cool. That is something that the ATEM Minis do not have. So with the ATEM Minis, you need to feed some other source in to playback video. This has that built right in, which is just simply amazing. This also does have macro support. I haven't taken a close look at that yet, so we'll have to come back and take a look at that. But it does allow you to essentially program it. So if there's something you commonly do, a series of actions that you commonly do, you can program that. One other unique thing about this too that the ATEM Minis don't have, and this is more of an advanced feature, but you can control the color format and the luma range of each input. So on the ATEM Mini, for example, if you plug in some cameras, especially more advanced cinema cameras, maybe some older cameras, they're sometimes configurable to send different luma ranges or different color formats. And so being able to have full control, if for some reason it doesn't auto-detect the format correctly, you can control that. And you can also control that on the outputs of this version as well, which is really, really powerful. Again, something that I've struggled with in some cases with the ATEM Mini models, but this doesn't seem to have that problem, which is really, really awesome. You can stream to up to 3 different platforms simultaneously directly from the deck. So you literally just paste the stream key in here. So right now I am streaming live to YouTube while I'm recording this. And I could also stream to 2 other services at the same time as well. That makes things super simple. You don't have to use services like Restream.io. You can do it directly from the deck itself, as long as you have enough bandwidth to do that. And streaming is pretty, it's usually about 6 megabits per stream. So most broadband connections can support that. All right, there are 2 unbalanced stereo mic line audio inputs. The first one also provides plug-in power. So if you're using a lavalier microphone that requires plug-in power, that can supply it. The second one can do microline input. However, it does not provide plug-in power. So just something to be aware of. So you do have those 2 inputs as well. There is a headphone output on the deck. And this is great because on the equivalent ATEM Mini or the ATEM Mini Pro, not the Extreme models, but the original models, they don't have headphone outputs, so monitoring those is kind of a pain, to be honest. And what's also advantageous about this one on the GoStream is that there's less latency on this one than what I experienced on the ATEM Mini Extreme models. So the headphone outputs on the Extreme models are there, that's great, so you can monitor your live stream's audio, but there's a lot of latency in it, so it gets really disorienting, especially if you're speaking into the microphone. That gets really disorienting. This also has some latency on the GoStream, but not nearly as much, and so it's not nearly as difficult to listen to, and so it makes it a lot more useful. If you are feeding audio into one of the mic inputs separate from your camera, the GoStream Deck does have the ability to apply an offset. And in fact, let me just show you here. If I come over and I'm going to come to the control app here, go ahead and switch. And if I come into the audio mixer, you can see for the two different microphone inputs, you have a delay setting here. And so you can apply up to 400 milliseconds of delay. That will help you to get your audio in sync with your video. That's a major problem that most of us run into. If we're feeding audio into the switcher separate from the camera, a lot of times the audio will be out of sync, and having this delay setting allows you to get it back in sync. And usually the problem is that the audio gets to the switcher much faster than the camera feed does, and so usually the camera feed is behind. So if you apply a little bit of a delay to the audio, you can get it back in sync with the video, which is a really, really handy feature. All right. There is another feature here on the GoStream that none of the ATEM Minis have, and that is a T-bar. A T-bar is what allows you to switch between sources by moving this little bar here, and then it's really nice because you can choose exactly how smooth you want the transitions to be. You can go really, really slowly if that's your vibe. So it's kind of nice to have that. And it's a little easier, I think, to get my hand on that versus finding the cut or the auto button. That's not generally a problem, but again, having this ability to just very smoothly switch between, and it's plastic, but it works nicely. So there is that. It also supports Supersource, which allows you to take multiple sources. Again, you have 4 inputs on here to take several of those sources and put them together. So for example, you can have one source that acts as the background. You can have another input that is maybe your main camera with your face on it, and yet another input that maybe has some graphic image or maybe some slides like I have over here. So if I switch on over to input number 4 here, this is just a series of slides that I can show. So that's really, really nice. And in fact, if I go to our Supersource here, you can see I have it kind of set up. I have a really ugly yellow background right now, but I have the slides on over here on one side, and I have my camera on the other. So that's pretty nice as well. Overall, the kit weighs just under 5 kilograms, so it's not super light. I don't want to give anyone the wrong impression, but it's a really nice build. Metal frame on the inside that holds, it kind of couches the deck itself and gives you a slot to store a USB battery, and also houses the very, very quiet fan. The fan is running. I don't know if you can hear that. There is a fan in there. Now, no product is perfect, and in fact, I want to call out just a few things about the GoStream really quickly here. Number one, there is no audio processing in the GoStream in its mixer. Let me just switch back over to the mixer here. So if I come back over into the GoStream app, you can see that there are no effects. There's no EQ, there's no limiter, there's no compressor, any of that like you have in the ATEM Mini model. So that's a big, big difference between the GoStream and the ATEM, where the ATEM clearly has the edge over the GoStream. There are no audio meters on the mix page in the app where you have the mixer. However, on the multi-view, there are meters, so you just have to rely on the multi-view for those audio meters. I think it'd be really nice to have it in the control app as well, just so you could see where things are sitting from an audio perspective. In terms of cons, you can't buy the case separately, so if you have the deck already and you wanted to kind of upgrade and add the case and the monitor, that's not an option. You have to buy the whole thing as one unit, so just something to keep in mind. Now, there are some other things too. The GoStream Deck is much newer than the ATEM Mini, and I will say that it looks like to me OSEE is still in the process of refining things. So the app is on its version 1.0, so it still has some refining, I will say. It is full featured and it's working surprisingly well for a version 1, I will say. But you've got all of your controls over here. For example, we have our background color, we have our upstream key. Again, what we're using that upstream key for is that allows us to put the chat on the screen here. So if I go ahead and choose a little something to show on the screen here, that's what this does for us. So that's pretty cool. And all of the other things, you have a downstream key. Of course, you have your you have some other controls here. You have your Supersource, masks for that, and all sorts of things there. We already showed you the audio mixer. You have some still images here, so your media pool, essentially you can drop different images in here, and we have set up our opening and closing slides for our live stream. You have your stream settings over here. You have playback and record settings over here, so when I'm playing back something from the SD card, that's right there. And then my record settings down here, and then of course we have our overall general settings where you can set up your multi-view where you want everything to be laid out. So over here we have our preview, our program. We can actually name our input sources. So I've got main camera, the Mac, the chat, the agenda. We have an auxiliary input, and the auxiliary input here is another huge advantage that the GoStream has over the ATEMs is it can accept an NDI source. So if you have another source on your network, maybe a computer that's connected on the same Ethernet network, that can be set up with NDI to be another source into the deck. So you can essentially have 5 sources. You have 4 HDMI inputs plus the auxiliary source, which can be set to be NDI if you wanted to. All right. Other things here, again, right now we have our auxiliary input set to SD card, but you can set it to NDI if you wanted to do that. That's pretty cool. Again, you can also set your output format, different frame rates. We don't want to change that right now because that'll restart the device. You can choose your color sources, your color spaces, excuse me, and the luma range, which again is one of those things I mentioned earlier, both on the out formats and what you want to output on the sources. So you can choose what you send to HDMI 1, what you send to HDMI 2. So right now that's the HDMI 1 is the HDMI output on the back of the unit, and then HDMI 2 goes to the 14-inch monitor built into the kit. And you can choose what you want to send, or what you want to stream, or what you want to record. In our case, of course, we want the program. That's the full live stream that I'm switching back and forth between the sources on. But you can also set that to an individual source if you wanted to do that, even the multi-view, if you're into that for whatever reason. And then, of course, we have a couple other things here like the button brightness on the deck itself and the fan control. So overall, that is a look so far at the OSEE GoStream deck kit. We have a lot more to dig into, and perhaps if you're interested, we can do that in a future episode, but I hope that was helpful. Now, let me just talk about the distinction between the ATEM Mini series and the GoStream deck. I think there are some advantages and disadvantages to both. If you use the audio processing in the ATEM, or you will use the audio processing in the ATEM Mini, that's really important to you, the ATEM is a clear winner. If, on the other hand, you want more flexibility, you want to be able to buy it in a kit with a 14-inch monitor and a little Pelican case, GoStream is a really good option. If you want some of these more advanced features like an NDI video source, or you want the ability to set the actual color space and luma range for your inputs and outputs, or you want a T-bar is really important to you, or you want to be able to control the entire thing from the physical unit itself and not have to run a remote program on a computer or an iPad or whatever to do this, this could be a really good option. So that is a look at the 2 different stream decks, and I hope that was helpful for you. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave those down below. In the meantime, get out there, make some great sound. Talk to you soon.